Imagine weighing so much at 26 years old that even a scale built for the morbidly obese can't handle your weight.
All right, the scale said over the limit.
That was Sean Milliken's reality, and it's only part of the story. He was bedbound, trapped in his own body, and completely dependent on his mother, whose love came at a devastating cost.
You're killing him right now. This has to stop.
This is a very unhealthy dynamic between them.
Sean's story is one of the darkest to unfold on My 600-Pound Life. It's about the pain he carried since childhood, an addiction he never learned to control, and a mother whose love kept him alive, and whose death ultimately killed him too. A growing problem. Sean's obesity story started when he was really young. His father had a bad temper. Sometimes he'd corner Sean and yell, and Sean never knew what was coming next. He was just a kid. He didn't understand fear like that, and he definitely didn't know how to deal with it, so he ate. And by age 9, he already weighed 150 pounds. His parents divorced the next year. Renee thought getting Sean away from his dad was the right call, and maybe it was. But Sean didn't see it that way. He felt like the divorce was his fault. So he turned to food for comfort. And by his teenage years, that addiction had taken hold, and there was no slowing it down.
I started gaining probably 50 pounds a year. And by the time I was in high school, I was over 400 pounds.
400 pounds in high school is not normal. That's more than double what a healthy teenager should weigh. Then in his senior year, everything changed for good. Sean fell down a flight of stairs and badly injured his leg. Because of his size, he couldn't heal properly, and he ended up stuck in bed. 8 years later, Sean was still bedbound, and in that time he got bigger and bigger.
Now I don't even know where I weigh, and I'm scared to find out. My knee has never fully healed. So I just kind of sit, watch TV, knit.
Being bedbound is about the worst thing that can happen to someone already struggling with their weight. Without any physical activity whatsoever, Sean couldn't burn calories, and he had nothing to distract him from his fixation on food either. With Sean unable to do anything for himself, the full weight of keeping him alive fell entirely on Renee. Renee was doing everything for Sean, but at his size, she couldn't manage it alone anymore. So they brought in an extra caretaker just to help wash him.
And it's really important that he stays clean because he gets open sores real easily.
And the hygiene factor matters more than people realize. When you're that big, your skin stretches so much that it tears open. If it isn't cleaned properly, it gets infected fast. And an infection could turn fatal at any moment. Then there was his rabid addiction to food. Sean was constantly hungry, with basically no control over it. And Renee gave in every time.
Sean has no appetite control. He's hungry incessantly. What do you want?
Just a couple burgers and soda. Maybe medium fry. Oh, could you give me one of those caramel sundaes?
Sure, no problem.
She'd head out with a handwritten list, sometimes ordering enough food for an entire family just for him. This was a man eating probably more than 15,000 calories a day, and every single one of those calories was making his situation worse. But from Renee's view, she wasn't trying to hurt him. She just didn't know how to say no to the person she loved most in the world.
I've had people tell me, you don't have to give him food just because he says he's hungry. But I'm a mom, and when your kids say, I'm hungry, Mom, you want to feed a kid.
And if I've been feeding you good content, return the favor by liking and hyping this video and subscribing to my channel. You'll help me grow, we'll watch patients shrink. Everybody wins. A near-death diagnosis. Eventually, Renee reached out to Dr. Now for help, and Sean's first appointment was set. He hadn't stepped on a scale in years, and he genuinely had no idea what he weighed. And once they arrived, just getting him into the hospital was a struggle.
Please stop. I can't go any further.
Stop. Somebody table.
Pain.
Sean, you feeling okay?
No, I'm in extreme pain.
The pain got so bad he couldn't go any further. So Dr. Now had no option but to examine him there in the hallway. Sean was too heavy for the standard scale they used for most obese patients. They had to switch to a special bed scale, and his weight was revealed to be over 900 pounds. This made him not just the heaviest patient Dr. Now had ever treated, but possibly the heaviest man alive at that time. Sean was sent home with a strict 800 calorie a day diet and a target to lose over 100 pounds in 2 months to qualify for surgery. But it didn't happen, and by now I'm pretty sure you know why.
Sean has the big appetite. He just wants to eat constantly. Never seems like he's going to get full. And if he's hungry, he needs something to eat.
Today I was craving a burger, and I think I have to be able to enjoy food just a little.
By his next appointment, it was clear Sean hadn't lost any weight. In fact, he looked far worse than he had the first time. But just how much worse?
When Sean arrived here, we were able to weigh him, and he was 1,003 pounds.
At 1,000 pounds, Dr. Now feared that if he sent Sean home, that would be the last time he saw him. So he was admitted to the hospital right there on the spot. Once admitted, Sean actually lost close to 250 pounds in 2 months. It was proof that with the right diet and support system, Sean was capable of real change. But he couldn't stay in the hospital forever, and when he was sent home to continue on his own, he relapsed. That's when Dr. Now sent in a psychologist to tackle the unhealthy dynamic between Sean and his mother.
Could you think about saying no as a way of saying, I love you?
I can, because I've kind of had to learn to do that. And I can't say it's a struggle I've completely overcome. I still succumb sometimes.
It's hard to say no.
Yeah, it's hard to say no.
Are you ready to start pushing yourself there?
Yeah.
The turnaround. The therapy actually made a difference. For years, Renee equated saying no with not loving her son enough. But for the first time, someone helped her see that saying no was actually protecting him. And a month later, Sean had lost enough weight to qualify for weight loss surgery. But Dr. Now wasn't taking it lightly. Sean was still over 600 pounds, and one of the largest patients he'd ever operated on. Although it was risky, the surgery went well, and by the end of the year, he weighed 548 pounds. That's a total loss of 455 pounds since he started the program.
I can get around a lot easier.
Good job, sweetie. You're doing great.
I still have a ways to go, but I'm closer than I've been in 10 years. Be back out there doing things, living life.
It looked like Sean had finally turned a corner. And he didn't stop there. Almost a year later, Sean was down to just under 500 pounds. But he had no idea how quickly that was about to change. Losing Renee.
This past month, things got really bad because my mother passed away. A couple of months ago, my mom went to the hospital because she wasn't feeling well, and she just kept getting worse. They said she had renal failure, and she didn't make it.
For Sean, he wasn't just losing his mother, which is hard enough as it is. Renee had done everything for him his entire life. He'd never had to function without her. This was the worst possible situation for someone like Sean. He'd always used food to cope with stress, and now he was dealing with the biggest loss of his life, with no support system left. And it showed almost immediately.
I was down to 492 a few months ago, and Dr. Now gave me the goal of losing 25 pounds a month.
Back at Dr. Now's office, Sean had gained 30 pounds. Honestly, it's hard to blame him. He'd just lost his mom. Even Dr. Now, who doesn't sugarcoat much of anything, softened a little here. He understood the grief, but he'd seen enough patients use their emotional pain as a justification before. He wasn't about to let Sean become one of them.
I know this may be hard to hear, but you're a grown man who has been given every resource to be able to take care of yourself right now.
Spiraling. But his first attempt at living alone and taking care of himself didn't go as planned. Without Renee's income, Sean could no longer afford his apartment and had to move into a smaller studio instead. And just weeks after moving in, Sean was rushed to the hospital after calling an ambulance for severe stomach pain. Tests found he developed a significant number of gallstones. But Dr. Now noticed something else too.
He looks like he has gained some since I saw him last.
Sean had actually gained weight again, nearly 75 pounds in 2 months, claiming he'd been living off bread because it was all he could afford. Dr. Now wasn't buying that excuse. Because of the gallstones, Dr. Now scheduled surgery to remove Sean's gallbladder. Then things went from bad to worse. Hurricane Harvey hit Houston, flooding the entire city and Sean's apartment along with it.
It's just as bad as I was afraid it was going to be. Water is gone now, but we got hit bad. It looks like it got up a few feet in here, and I could smell the rot in the mold, which is probably coming from everything, including my stuff. This is pretty much my worst case scenario.
In that moment, Sean just wanted to give up. He felt like every time he tried to move forward, something knocked him right back down. Fortunately, his apartment complex moved him to a new unit rent-free for a few months while they made repairs to the damage. Then he received a free mattress and new furniture from a furniture store that was helping out residents in Houston who were affected by the flood. This was the break Sean desperately needed. But even with a little luck on his side, Sean's habits didn't change. And by his next appointment with Dr. Now, it looked like the damage was done.
I have no hopes, no expectations. I just want to get this over with.
709.
To put that number in perspective, gaining 190 pounds in 2 months meant Sean was eating about 12,000 calories and gaining over 3 pounds every single day. Which raises the obvious question, how was Sean paying for any of this? He didn't have a job, he could barely take care of himself most days, and he'd just lost nearly everything he owned to the hurricane. So where was the money coming from? Dr. Now wanted answers too.
I had some money come in recently.
So, what do you do with the money that you got recently?
Pretty much ate it.
So, how much money is left now?
Over 1,000.
He didn't go into detail about where the money came from, but he had already burned through most of it on food. It's not a big surprise, I'm sorry to say. Nobody ever taught Sean how to take responsibility for himself. With his mother babying him his entire life, Sean was unequipped to manage his money, his food intake, or really anything about his own life. Despite the vicious cycle Sean seemed to be stuck in, Dr. Now never gave up on him. This time, the hospital would teach Sean not just to control his diet, but basic hygiene and self-care. And after 2 months, Sean was under 500 pounds again. He was showering with less help and even getting dressed on his own.
It's been hard, but it feels good to do this. My goal is to be completely independent of needing anyone's help, and I'm really proud of what I've accomplished so far.
But the real test was whether he could actually keep it up and keep the weight off once he walked out those doors alone. A few months passed with no word from Sean. When he missed a scheduled appointment, Dr. Now sent an ambulance straight to Sean's door, but nobody was prepared for what that visit would reveal.
When we sent him home almost 2 months ago, we had been able to get his weight down to 489. But as of today, he has gained 278 pounds to get back up to 766 in the short time he's been home.
Tests confirmed that Sean's health had seriously deteriorated. He had developed an infection, and combined with the recent weight gain, his life was now under serious risk. With no other options left, Dr. Now transferred him to a rehab facility for round-the-clock monitoring. But sadly, 2 weeks later, Sean passed away from complications tied to the infection.
I'm very sad to say that earlier today, Sean Menachem passed away. Over the past few years, we had worked with him to try to get his weight down, but Sean has consistently regained any weight we helped him to lose. Sean was a sweet person who really struggled the past couple of years with everything he went through. But there were moments that he did try hard and made progress that I was proud of him for. And I very much wanted to see him succeed. Sean never gave up, and I'm proud of him for that. And as sad as his outcome is, I'm at least glad I had the chance to know him.
Looking back, Sean had been given more chances to succeed than most people on My 600-Pound Life ever get. His mom gave him everything, except the tools to survive without her. In the end, he wasn't able to overcome his food addiction, and probably would have benefited from more therapy than he received. Sean's story is one of the most tragic ones I've covered on this channel. But if heartbreaking and unforgettable stories are your thing, there's more where that came from. Browse the playlists on your screen, and I'll see you in the next one.